Hello there, it's Cassie and welcome back for another scrapbookpal.com video. Today we're going to be using the Honeybee Stamps Paradise Blooms with the matching dies, and I'm super excited to be sharing this project with you. It's going to be two cards that we're going to be making, and we're going to be doing what I like to call underpainting. And to do that, we're going to be using these Nuvo Watercolour Pencils. I chose the Pastel highlights, and I went ahead and swatched those out, but those are the colors we're going to be using. We're going to watercolor today, and we're also going to be using the Nuvo Shimmer powder in the color Sunray Crossette. I'm sure some of you know how to pronounce that. I don't, but it's a really beautiful yellow. It has lots of great shimmer. I have some watercolor paper that I went ahead and cut down to about 4¼ by 5½ inches, and I am just going to take the lid off of my shimmer powder, and I'm going to just tap the very bottom of the bottle with my finger. I don't want to squeeze this. I'm not trying to get too much powder out there, but I have a significant amount, and now I'm going to spritz it with my distress sprayer. So I just want to get some water on there to get that moving. I'll tap a little bit more color on there, and I'll even add a little bit more water to see if I can get that moving even a little bit more. But powders like this can be so much fun because, like this one, you see little bits of red in there, and then you get that sprayed around a little bit and it turns into some orange, and you've got those beautiful golden colors. It's just a fun way to make a background. I'm actually going to do this with, I think, like 5 or 6 sheets of paper. In between, I will dry these with my heat tool because I do want to add a little bit more powder and a little bit more water. We're going to see if we can layer this up, and then I will show you the amount of shimmer that they have. But this is just a fun way to make a background, and I love making different backgrounds. So that was completely dry. Now I'm going to put a little more powder on there, spritz that with water, try to get that powder moving even more. I'll do it with this one, spritz it with water. I'll even bring my finger in there to kind of move it around just a little bit, and I just think it's so cool how you have those like different granules of color in there, and how well they go together. So let me pick this up and show you just how shimmery it is. It is like, wow, just wow, beautiful shimmer. And we're going to use these for our stamping and for our panels. Okay, so I'm going to take each of those panels. I only need 3 of them for the stamping, but I'm going to put this inside of my mini MISTI, and I will grab out the stamps from the Honeybee Stamps Paradise Blooms stamp set. And I love how big these are. Just a lot of great images to choose from and a few sentiments in there. And I'm just going to put as many as I can fit on this panel, and I'll move those around until I'm happy with them, just trying to make sure that I have plenty of room to use the die cut. And when I have them all on there, I'm going to close the door of the MISTI, and I'll grab a waterproof ink. You could use, for example, Lawn Fawn's Jet Black ink. That is waterproof. And then I'm going to actually stamp this a couple of times just to make sure that I have a good crisp image. But like I said, I'm actually going to stamp out 3 different panels with a few different images on there. And I'm stamping it, like I said, each time twice just to make sure that I have a good crisp image. Stamping over shimmer can be sometimes a little bit, not difficult, but that's why I'm stamping it twice, just to make sure. And I'm using my microfiber cloth because it just makes it easier to go over the top and really get a good impression. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about those Nuvo Watercolour Pencils. There are 3 ways I discovered you could use them. You can scribble it right onto your watercolor paper and use your water brush and then drag that color out. Another way that you could use these pencils is to dip your pencil right into some water. That activates the pigments, and you can color that way, and you can even use your water brush over the top of that as well. One of my favorite ways to use it is actually to take your water brush right to the pencil and paint that way as well. We're going to use the first and third options there. All right, so now doing some coloring. One of my favorite things about doing underpainting is that it can take away some of the intimidation of coloring an entire image. So you'll notice obviously that underpainting has lots of yellows, it has, oranges and reds and variations of the color the way that they are on there. I mean, panels like this are just pretty all on their own, but now when we can add some color over the top of it, like these watercolor pencils, I like to leave some of that underpainting showing, so I don't have to do all the coloring, if that makes any sense. So I leave some of that area uncolored, and I think that just adds a lot of interest to the images themselves. I really like these watercolor pencils. Having this be my first time ever using them, I think they go on very nicely, and they spread and paint beautifully. And I'm working with a limited number of colors here, so having that underpainting is just another, it adds that much more to the color, because coloring over the top of it and then painting that changes the color just a little bit, so it makes it so that your colors will go even that much further. The price point of these is just that much. It's so fantastic, and there are several tins available. Like I said, just got the pastel highlights, but there are others, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to get them now because I really do enjoy painting this way. I'm gonna work in layers on most of these images, which is the way I found that watercolor works best anyway. So I'm gonna dry that with my heat tool in between. And here's where I'm going to bring in coloring, just bringing the water brush right to the pencil. That intensifies that color quite a bit, and I think that is just cool, and it adds that deeper shade that I was looking for. One of the things I did notice is that it does cover up those lines just a little bit, so the black from my stamping kind of is a little bit more subdued. If that is something that bothers you, one thing that you could do is, if you left your stamps in your MISTI or whatever stamp positioning tool that you had, if you left them there, you could put this back into that MISTI and then re-stamp it again, and that way the black ink would be over the top of all your watercoloring. So keep that in mind. All right, now we're going to color one of the leaves. I'm doing some of the green, and it's pretty subtle, this lighter green. I imagine if I had gotten some of the darker colors, it would have been even more intense, but I really do like how these colors are so subtle, especially with that yellowish background. So I'll just color that color on there the same way that I did before with the little hibiscus, and then we'll paint that color out. And this time, instead of bringing in more green, which I will do a little bit of the green, I'm actually going to bring in a darker green. So there are several options here. You could layer up color on color in a sense of like the green on top of the green, or you can layer other colors on top of these as well. So I think that's really cool. You can see some of that underpainting under there pretty well. So here we are, grabbing in some of that color just the same way that I was painting before, by taking my water brush right to the pencil. And I do like the subtle blue that adds to our little leaf here. And then we'll bring in even a little bit more green just to intensify the green. Because like I said, it is a very light green. And then we'll paint. I'm kind of holding it up in the light because it's easier to see where the shimmer is as well, and painting it that way. Now we'll move on to this little flower here. And I'm gonna, come in with the same technique that I did before. Bring in my color, bring in the paintbrush, and not go all the way to the edge of the petal. I just love doing that. Leaving some of that white space, even though this isn't a white, background. It's like I'm leaving some white space. And then I'll bring in a darker pink color and do the same process as before with bringing the water brush right to the pencil. And then for our final leaf on here, we're just going to bring in the darkest green, which isn't even a very dark green, because remember, these are pastel colors. And then I'll drag that color out using the water brush. And then I'm going to bring in a dark blue, well, for as dark as pastels are. And then I'll bring that color in just a little bit. I do like how those layer up on top of each other and mix. It's just a really pretty subtle kind of green and blue combo. I was a little bit nervous painting over the top of this yellow using a purple pencil, because typically purple and yellow don't mix together, but that color underneath is not set per se, but it doesn't mix so much that we end up with a brown here. So this is the last flower I'm actually going to show you, simply because there's a lot of coloring and it's all the same process. But I noticed that this had no problem layering on top of each other, and it looks so pretty, just so pretty. And I love those yellow undertones and even some of the pinks and the red in the background. It just is, it makes for an absolutely gorgeous flower. And then our center is going to be that dark pink again. And then when we're happy with that, and I've colored everything, we're going to heat set them all, and then we're going to grab the matching dies and run that through our die cutting machine. And aren't those cool, the way those look with that background, that little bit of yellow sticking through, and then you have the beautiful watercolored images with the watercolor pencils. So our next step would be to get our card bases ready. I just have some craft cardstock, and I've cut those down to be 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, which means I'm going to score them at 4.25. These are going to be top folding A2 size cards. And then just using my score buddy there. And then I will stamp out the sentiment that I want, which is just hello. I'm going to stamp that twice and grab the matching die and then line that up and run that through my die cutting machine. I think that's really cool that Honeybee has stamps like this. And then we'll get ready to start adhering all the pieces to the front of our card. I'm going to use some Nuvo Deluxe liquid glue to adhere down the pieces to the back panel, the ones that I want in the background. And then we are going to pop up the two other flowers. We're going to use our 3D foam squares from Scrapbook Adhesive. Just being pretty liberal with how I put those on the back. Peel off that release paper. And then we'll do the same thing with our little hibiscus. Peel off all those release papers and stick that one down as well. And I just think it's nice because it adds a little bit of dimension without going too crazy. And then we have to put our sentiment down, so I'm just going to add liquid glue to the back of my sentiment to adhere that to the front. But I felt like it needed a little something, so once I have that on there, I'm going to add a few of the images to the inside. This is what I was talking about, wanting some extra pieces so that way I could add them to the inside. I love decorating the insides of my cards. If you didn't want to do that, there's plenty here that you can make a third card instead. But I'm just going to overlap those. And then I'll flip that over and trim off the excess. And then I'll adhere my card panel to my card base using that same Nuvo Deluxe liquid glue. And then I'm going to grab out my T ruler because I just feel like this card, the front needs a little something. So I'm going to line that up and use a permanent black marker. You could use something like a Copic multi-liner. And I'm just going to add a small border around the outside edge of this entire card. And I found that the easiest way to do this actually was not that way that I was doing right there, but flip it, and then looking through the see-through ruler, I can gauge it from there on how close that is to the edge, and that way it'll be even all the way around. And then, so then we have this nice little rectangular frame basically, and I think it frames the images very nicely. And we'll do that with the other one as well. And that's actually going to finish off both of the cards. Let me show you the shimmer and how pretty these look up close. So shimmery, so pretty. Who wouldn't want to get that in the mail, right? So give it a try. Go ahead and try underpainting and try these watercolor pencils because they're fabulous. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already done so. Thank you so much for stopping by, and we will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.